Hi guys, just a quick note before we get started. Today's guest is Palestinian, so we discuss the ongoing war in Gaza and the history of violence inflicted on Palestinians. The conversation doesn't get too heavy, but I wanted to mention it so you can decide if now's the right time to listen. Hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome to My Arab Dad, the podcast where we interview Arabs from all over the world to explore the layered, complex, and incredible relationships we have with our dads. Conversations we don't usually have about the dynamics that shaped us. If you're an Arab dad, partnered with one, a baba to be, or simply have one, then this is the show for you. I'm your host, Ibrahim Kamel, and this is deeply personal to me. I have an Arab dad. I am an Arab dad. So I want to delve into what makes us tick with equal parts humor, compassion, and insight. In today's episode, my guest Ayah reflects on her dad who felt the constant push and pull between being a caring but assertive father, how his survivor's guilt shaped his parenting, and the lengths he goes to show his children just how much he loves them. At the end of the episode, Ayah offers advice to Arab dads today. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to My Arab Dad. This is the first episode that I am recording remotely, so apologies if there are any hiccups or any technical difficulties. I am joined today by my guest, Ayah. Hi, Ayah.
Hello.
What was your initial thought when I asked you to come onto the podcast?
I don't know if you know this, but I talk a lot about my parents. And they're a huge part of like what I write about and kind of what inspires a lot of the content that I create. So I was actually very grateful and excited.
So, that leads me on to my next question. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do?
So I'm Palestinian, grew up in Saudi. My mom is Saudi, but like she's Mujannesa, so she's originally Palestinian, but she got naturalized. Well, she was born here and naturalized by virtue of that. So yeah, and then my dad is full Palestinian, but also has a Jordanian nationality, and I'm a filmmaker.
You said you talk a lot about your parents in your filmmaking and in your content, in the content that you create. Tell me a little bit about that.
I wrote an essay about my mom and my relationship with my mom that was published by Womena. It's like a women-led media platform. It's amazing. It's really, really cool. So I was really fortunate to have them publish my essay. Yeah, that one was more about my mom. And then currently, actually, I'm working on a short film about my dad.
Yeah. Very, very timely then that you are
Exactly.
on a podcast called My Arab Dad. So could you tell me about your family setup growing up?
My dad he's actually worked in the same company my whole life. Actually, it wasn't until recently that I found out what he did for work. Because he never really talked about it. And no, it was very much, and no, he goes to work, he comes home, and work is not mentioned. Which I think is uncommon because maybe it's not uncommon, but he was not a workaholic per se. He very much was present as a father, very involved, very happy to switch off and spend quality time with us when he got home. And my mom was like a stay-at-home mom. And yeah, so it was very, very privileged childhood for across the board, but like especially, I would say not especially in Saudi, but in Saudi, even in Saudi.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, 2 sisters. I'm the eldest.
You're the eldest, Kaman.
Mm-hmm.
How was it being the eldest?
Oh my God, disaster. Sucks. I hate being the eldest. I was just pissed because my dad's background, he had 10 siblings, now they're 9. But he grew up in a house full of siblings. So for him, his biggest priorities in life are family duties and social obligations. For me, when I was young, I was 4, and then my sister was born. And obviously, she was like the worst thing that could have ever happened to me at that time, at that age. Because I was a brat, I was 4, I had all the attention.
Of course.
Yeah.
So your world is turned upside down.
Horrible. And I'm like, this comes around, she's cuter than me, and everyone's obsessed with her. My dad would always like stress when I would be rude to my sister or be mean, and I was horrible to her. But
Mm.
he would make me feel like you're the eldest, so you can't like even if she did XYZ, you're the eldest. You should know better. You're the eldest, and whatever. It was fine, but I'm like super lucky now. I feel I
Yeah.
love,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you call your dad?
Baba.
That's very interesting because I think you're definitely in the minority of the people that I've interviewed so far.
Really?
And not just, yeah, yeah, yeah. And not just like, I'm not even talking about like immigrants, as in like westernized Arabs who grew up in the UK or the US or whatever. I'm talking about like Arabs who grew up in the region that I can think of. I think only two so far, you included, have said Baba.
Really? Really? What
Yeah.
do people
Because
say?
Pop, Pa, Dad, which is what I used to call him. I used to just call him. I didn't call him Dad. I called him Dead.
Dead.
But yeah, and it was Dead. Could you describe Baba then in 3 words?
I would say he's generous. He is funny. He's hilarious. And I would say dutiful is the third word. Yeah.
Where do you think that sense of duty comes from?
I think it I think it definitely comes from uh, him being part of such a big family, having so many siblings to watch out for. They watch out for him, and I think his parents, so my paternal grandparents, really stressed that. I think a lot of it also comes from being Palestinian, and maybe I'm making too much of a leap here, but from what I know of the story of my grandfather is he really had to come to Jordan and start from scratch. And I think like these family ties are what helped them survive in those days.
What was your relationship like with him growing up?
I grew up in the house my grandparents built when they moved here, like, and so
Wow.
it was really nice because I had my grandparents as extra parents. So I feel like I had this kind of unique situation where my grandparents, I would say, equally raised me. Um, I
Mm.
remember so much when my dad's at work, my mom was she's a socialite, let's say. So she would like go see her friends and just like whatever. So it was my grandmother and my grandfather who was actually the disciplinarian, and he was a big reader, he was a writer, so he was a poet and a writer, and he's the one who inspired my love for writing.
Do you feel like maybe having your grandparents there, do you think like that maybe gave your dad the space to separate work from home, right? Because he comes back home and he's like, okay, I don't need to مثلا sit and obsess about like how are they being raised مثلا when I'm at work, because it's like لا أنا مطمن, I'm secure because their grandparents are there.
For sure, I think. And no, I think that I never remember my dad asking me about my homework, asking me if I did it, if I was gonna do it. Um, my dad honestly was very lax with that because I was a very studious kid, and because my grandfather, more so than that, was the
Mm.
one always following up, making sure. Even though my grandfather did most of the studious work, my dad was the one who came to all the shows that we had at school, the parent-teacher meetings.
Mm.
Um, he was so there. And like I knew, for example, if I was sick and the nurse had to call someone, my dad would answer. Like he's very reliable. He's funny because I mentioned he has 10 siblings. Well, nine now. Seven of them are women. And so he only has two brothers, and then he had three daughters. So he is surrounded by
He's
women,
surrounded by
did
women.
surrounded. And so I feel like he was conflicted in that he was a girl dad, but then he sometimes had these moments where he wanted to like be like, لا أنا
Mm.
رجال البيت وأنا
I'm the
أبوكم or whatever.
man. Yeah.
I'm the man. When we became teenagers, I would say that's when things maybe got changed a little bit. Like he was always like very open. We could always invite guy friends over. He knew we had guy friends. We went to an international school. which in Saudi it sounds normal for anywhere else, but in Saudi I think it was different because most schools are segregated and uh,
Mm.
mingling between genders and stuff wasn't as common as it is in other places. So he was the coolest, I would say, from all the dads that I knew, most of the dads I knew. I couldn't tell him, مثلا, if I had a boyfriend as a teen.
Mm.
I had to hide that from him. But yeah, عادي, I could invite the boyfriend over if it was like, oh, a group of friends are over. He was pretty chill, but he would flip like this. So, like I said, he was a girl dad. And so he would flip between being really cool and very comfortable being around all these women to suddenly being like, أنا رجال البيت.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes
I'm the man of the house.
exactly. And sometimes I'd be out and it would be عادي and it's all good. And then he'd call me yelling, like fuming, rage, like so much that I could put the phone here and you could still hear every word.
Oh
Yeah, and this
no.
was a Nokia, so bear in mind, like, yeah,
Yeah, that stuff was made out of like titanium alloy. You know
literally,
what I mean? Like,
literally. And I can put it here and you can hear everything perfectly, no static. And so my friends would joke about it because we'd be out and they'd see my dad calling me if it was near my curfew time or if I was like 5 minutes after my curfew, and rage would ensue. So I would say
mm,
it was inconsistent, but I always had to consider his urge to be the dominant male, let's say.
mm. What's your relationship like with him now?
My relationship with my dad now is we are still very close. He still cares very much about being there for me. There's a bit of a distance, I would say, because as much as I love him, as much as I respect him, there are some choices that I feel like I want to make for myself that are different. Where, for example, I'm not so obsessed with social obligations, that kind of thing. And my dad still is very much adamant on me adhering to them. So this is where we
Mm,
clash. Sometimes I feel like he doesn't care so much. He does, of course, care about my work, but he doesn't realize that the field that I've chosen, which I'm sure you know, it requires a lot
mhm,
of deep work and long hours and focus. Sometimes he doesn't understand, like, why are you up there for hours a day and
mm,
alone? He doesn't understand it, and he thinks that I should be out there networking. Like, we disagree a little bit on my career or what I would prefer to do. So there's some things that I've done to protect myself where I just kind of don't really tell him about what I'm working on or my work. But we're still very close. He's still very supportive. He cares a lot,
mm.
but we do clash. Like the other day, we got into an argument because he told me that I have to call a friend who's in town. She's like a really good childhood friend, but she didn't call me either, and I'm not offended and
Mhm.
whatever. But then he was like, "You have to," and then I said, "Why do you think I don't have to?" And no, it's fine.
Mm,
And then he was like, "إلا," whatever, and I'm like, "Why do you think that you can tell me who I have to call and why?" And then he said, "بالآخر
mm.
إحنا أهلك وإحنا أهل بنضلنا أهل." It happened, his usual.
So he really did say at the end of the day, we're your parents.
Yes,
You are a grown up.
I know.
You are a fully fledged grown
I
up.
know. So
Yeah.
this is where sometimes we clash because he has these kind of I don't want to call them old fashioned, but maybe intrusive
Mm,
Arab dad values where he thinks he can have
hmm.
a say in these things. And often you can tell they're just ego driven and they're just a defense mechanism or a reaction, or because this is how he lives his life. He doesn't understand that I don't want to live my life this way. And so he tries to pull this card, بالآخر إحنا أهل, because it worked when I was a kid, but now it can't work.
Mm.
There's certain things that he just can't understand, and I can't bring them up to him. It's not that he can't understand them, it's that he's very rigid in his thinking.
I'm curious to kind of delve into his upbringing a bit.
So he is the second youngest of 10 siblings. Um, he was born in Jordan, but his two eldest siblings were born in Nablus, I think, maybe even three.
Mm.
And so he was born when my grandfather was pretty much settled in Jordan. My grandfather was a entrepreneur, so they would go through periods of prosperity and then instability. It fluctuated a lot, and I think that instability kind of affected them a lot. And yeah, he grew up. He went to school in Jordan, went to preppy private school, and then he got kicked out, and so he got subsequently kicked out of so many schools that he went. His last school was called Al Asima, and once he took us to it in Jordan, and we were like, "What on earth is this?" It was like
Is this a prison?
literally, it was terrifying, and we were like, "This is crazy." And then he graduated and he studied in Louisiana. Yeah. Then he actually moved back to Jordan. I think at that point, my grandfather wasn't doing very well. His business wasn't doing well. So then my dad kind of struggled. So he joined the army, the Jordanian army. And yeah,
Oh.
I asked him about it. He says he loved it, actually. I think there's something about the camaraderie that people like. He said they ate mensaf all the time. So he liked that.
That's great. Dad, what did you love about the army? Mainly the men's.
Literally. Literally. I was like, oh.
Could you describe what mensef is to anybody who doesn't know what
Yeah.
mensef is?
Yeah, it's a national dish of Jordan. It's very heavy. It's like rice cooked in, I think, like beef stock with saffron, so it's yellow, and then it has lamb, and then it has or goat, and then it has jamid, which is like this fermented yogurt cheese situation that you pour on top. It's like a liquid, but it's a complete liquid, and then it's topped with nuts. Yeah, it's really good, honestly. I love
Yeah.
stuff, but it's heavy. And so I,
Yeah.
I don't know how like the army is eating mensaf and then running and jumping and doing drills, to be honest. But apparently it happened. And then he moved to Saudi for work.
Okay. How do you think his upbringing shaped him as a dad?
I think he idolized his dad. Also, one thing about him, which I haven't mentioned before, is he is insanely pro-Palestine, obviously, but what I mean
Of
is
course.
Al Jazeera is on 24/7 in our house, 24/7.
Mm.
Even, genocide aside, he's always reading, watching. He's seen almost every Palestinian film and documentary on the weekends. That's what he'll do.
Wow.
Yeah, even the niche ones. I'll show him a film by Michel Khleifi, who's quite a niche art house filmmaker, Palestinian filmmaker, and he'll have seen all his films. I think this is that upbringing is what shaped him as a father, is like knowing where he came from, really keeping that heritage alive. And he does that, I think, by doing exactly what his father did, which is stress the importance of family. Really, he's so attached to his siblings. He prioritizes them above all else.
And I think when you are displaced from your land, the strongest tie that you have to a land that you can no longer live in is your family.
Yeah.
And is in the familial ties, and it's like we kind of Palestine will live on through us and through our relationships with each other, and then our relationships with our children, and how we keep that very strong identity going.
Yeah, 100%. And I also think there's so much trauma that really it keeps coming to me in snippets as an adult, and we never heard of it when we were kids, but especially on my dad's side, so much trauma. Like my grandfather was part of the Communist Party in Palestine, and
Oh,
he was jailed, arrested, and exiled, and apparently, like they say, he had to walk from Nablus to Jordan barefoot. There's that. There's also my grandmother saw her brother being shot when the Israelis came, and rounded up all the men in the village and in the city, sorry, because they're from Nablus, and then lined them up and shot them all. There's just things like that where I feel like they really are deep within him and his siblings, and they haven't processed them, and so they come out in random bouts of rage, let's say, or random bouts of sadness. My dad is guilty all the time, and I think if there's one thing I can define him by, it's like it's guilt. He is guilty with other people, I mean, like with duties, obligations, but he's also constantly guilty about the life him and his family were able to build versus the life of his fellow countrymen. And the other day, like a week ago, I walked downstairs and he was watching Janine Janine, the documentary by Muhammad Bakri. And I was like, Baba, he's like, I don't want to forget. I never want to forget. What
Survivor's guilt.
Survivor's guilt, which it's why he really feels this need to be good to his family because, like you said, it's all they have.
I think it's important when you reference how the lack of processing of that generational trauma, how that بتطلع منه ازاي, right? Like, how does that come out? If he calls, not to excuse any kind of time that he called you and shouted, for example, but if he calls, if you're 5 minutes late for curfew, and then because when I was 5 minutes late after my curfew, I would get grounded for a month, right? When you come back 10 minutes after your curfew, I'm sure he's pissed off about the curfew. It's also entirely possible that like there's been something that he's seen, or I mean, especially if Gezira's on all the time, that's triggered him, and then he just like, and he doesn't necessarily know how to process it. But you're home late after curfew, and then it's like, I'm just going to go ballistic.
100%.
But really, it's been triggered by this headline that he's read, that he's seen in a Gezira, which is constantly on, which also makes sense. Like the interplay between like survivor's guilt, lack of processing generational trauma. My daughter's 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
I'm going to lose it.
100%. And he also witnessed, our generation is the first, me and my sisters, to speak almost entirely in English. يعني بنحكي عربي بس we're much more comfortable in English.
طبعا.
So he starts to feel like the values are slipping away, what we're losing, who are we even? My kids are in a British school. إحنا مين? إيش عم نعمل? My dad was born and raised in Jordan his whole life. So to see his kids experience something very different to what he experienced, he grew up surrounded by family, extended family, speaking in Arabic, speaking in his accent. And then we were very confused. What dialect do we speak? Do we speak Saudi? Do we speak Palestinian? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that leads me to my next question, which is, the way that I phrased the question is, how did growing up in Saudi with, a Palestinian heritage kind of shape your dad's parenting? And I think you've answered that quite well. But I would like to focus actually specifically on language and dialect.
Yeah.
So when you speak Arabic, you speak Saudi.
I speak both, and it's really weird. I really alternate, and I don't know. I speak in the Saudi dialect when I'm here mostly, to mostly everyone. But at home we speak in the Palestinian dialect almost exclusively. It was a code switch. So we'd go out in the world, speak Saudi, come home, speak Palestinian. Sometimes the words would bleed into each other and it would get confusing. And so it was really a lot of code switching, I would say.
Switching gears now, could you share like one of your funniest or nicest memories of your dad?
Back in 2015, when the religious police were still a thing, my sister was at the beach compound, which technically they're private. It's private property if it's a compound. And she was there with a bunch of her friends, 2 guys and another girl. And they were just like kayaking, hanging out, etc. And then the religious police broke in to the beach. And my dad was partying 40 minutes away in the main city with my uncle. in Jeddah. And my sister tries calling him frantically. He's not picking up because he's partying. And then eventually he picks up, and it's right before the religious police confiscates my sister's phone. And she tells him, "Listen, Baba, I'm in Salhiya, the compound. The religious police broke in, and you need to come get me as soon as possible because I don't know what the hell's gonna happen." So then my dad has to think really quickly. So he tells my uncle, "Oh my God, yeah, whatever, we need to go." He tells my sister, "Don't move, whatever happens, stay at the beach." Like, because if you go to this unknown location and your phone is confiscated, I'm never gonna find you. Like, we don't know where the maghfar is.
Mm.
My sister like tries to hold still, whatever. The religious police realize that she's waiting for someone. So to mess with her, they move the car to another part of the compound that my dad, different to the one she told my dad they were in. So my sister is like at this point
Mm.
like panicking, praying, like, "Please, please, please come like as soon as possible. Like at least he'll be able to find me." He doesn't come. They're about to leave to go to the maghfar. And she's like, there's two gates, one to enter, one to leave. So she's hoping that as they're exiting, she'll see my dad, but no luck. So anyway, they take a U-turn to get on the main road to go to the maghfar, and then she sees a car like tailgating them. And it's my dad, my uncle, my aunt, and my mom in the back. And my uncle is Saudi, so he's wearing the full like ghutra wa igal and like intense, which yeah,
Yeah. The fully, yeah.
traditional, which I doubt he was wearing at the party. So that's probably they went to trade.
Yeah.
And my dad is with him, whatever. They get to the maghfar. They take my sister to a cell. And then my dad and my uncle walk in. And my dad is like, "Fain binti? Fain binti? Jibuha
Where's my
dahin."
daughter?
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
"Where's my daughter? Where's my daughter? Bring her here right now." He's like, "I want to beat her with my own two hands. Like, she's brought shame on us. Like, she's brought shame on our family." And then my uncle is like on his knees, like, "What is the sheikh of our tribe gonna say?" Like screaming. And then, and then the religious police were like, "Oh my God." They were like, "Oh my God, like, actually, wasn't that bad. She wasn't really doing anything." And they were like, "Wasn't that bad? She was with men." Whatever, like screaming. And then they take my sister, and then my sister has to just sign a warning. And then they're like, "It really wasn't that bad." Like they like are consoling my dad. And anytime they try to come close, my dad is like, "No, no, stay away," because he had been drinking. So he didn't want them to smell the alcohol. So yeah, it's one of my favorite stories
That's
because yeah,
clever.
it's
That
super
is
clever.
so clever. Could you tell me about a time that your dad was proud of you and that he actually vocalized it?
I would say when I got into Berkeley, we had been fighting, and then he remembered that that was the day I was supposed to hear back from Berkeley. And he was like, "Did you get in?" And then I said, "Yes." And then he started crying. And then he said he was so proud of me.
Wow.
Yeah. And then another time I would say is when I wrote the essay about my mom, he's very proud of me about that.
I like how, despite the fact that you had an argument, that he was just like, that's not important right
Yeah.
now. It doesn't matter what the argument was about. I know how much this matters to you. Did you get in? Yes, I did. Okay, I'm gonna cry now. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's quite nice that he used to cry in
I love
front of you.
Such a crier. He always cries.
Right. So, I have asked you to bring in a picture today.
Yeah.
Right. Can you please explain what is happening in this photo?
Okay, so my dad is the one on the bottom right. So the one on the right. Um, and basically, he's eating mensaf with his friends. And they had a camera and they were trying to time, because the way you eat mensaf is you roll it into a little ball and then you toss it and you're supposed to eat it. Like, it's
Oh.
like a very small toss and whatever. You
Oh,
toss
I
and
see what
eat,
you mean.
but they were like going ham. So I guess it's just him and his friends. And I love this photo because it captures his energy and yeah, his vibe.
How old is he in this photo?
I think he is 16 or 17. So this is 1979. He was born in
Yeah.
1961.
It's interesting because of his height in comparison to whoever's next to him, he looks much smaller and therefore much younger. So he looks like
Right?
he's like 11.
I know, he looks like a
But
child. It's
he looks like
crazy.
a child, but he's 17.
Yeah. Or 18
Or like
even.
18, if
18.
he's 61 and this is
Yeah. 18 and he looks like a little kid. So I think it says a lot about him. I think he is a child at heart and clearly at 18 he was still doing things like this. Um yeah.
I love this photo.
He's still very childish. Like he loves playing and yeah.
Yeah. I like that despite all of the things that he has experienced, that his parents experienced, that like, you know, his identity has experienced, he still has a capacity to be very, very playful. I think there's something incredibly admirable in that.
Yeah.
Okay, now for the questions round. In front of you, you have 4 questions that I'd like you to choose from over 2 rounds. Each round, you get to choose between 2 questions. Once you've responded to one, you have the option of revealing the other question. Because we are doing this remotely, I have the questions in front of me,
Okay.
which I'm gonna.
Oh my God. No, this is so
on.
good.
Hold up to the screen.
So good.
So, out of questions 1 and 2, which one would you like?
I'll go for 1.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask
my
you
God, so good.
to read out the
Okay.
question, please.
So, can you think of a singular moment your dad really imprinted his Palestinian identity to you? I think no, because it was just, I don't even remember the first time I learned that I was Palestinian. I just knew it. It's so crazy. I think it just was so enforced from such a young age that at the age of, I just can't, I don't have a conscious moment where it was imprinted. Yeah.
Would you like to reveal what question 2 was?
Oh my God, this is so hard because I'm so nosy. You know what? I'm going to be mature and say no.
Right. Now between questions 3 and 4.
4.
Okay. Can you read out the question, please?
Yes. What do you see in your dad that you see in yourself? Oh my God, there's 2 things. Can I say them both? I would say maybe
Yeah.
the guilt. Like him, I get very guilty. I feel really bad when I upset someone or, yeah, he can't stand for someone to be upset at him. So I guess it's the guilt. And then the other thing, which he really taught me, is I think, generosity. It's always give people and never just like be always make sure you're giving people more than you're taking from them, I guess, or not even in that way. It's just like be free, like know that whatever you give someone, it'll come back to you in another way. Yeah.
Give freely.
Give freely. Exactly. Give freely.
I really like that. I really wish I had more of that sometimes, to be honest. So thank you for that, because I'm really, really going to reflect on that one.
Okay. Nice. I'm glad. I'm trying to give less freely.
In this segment, I'm going to read out a number of statements that I'd like you to complete. You can either follow your gut instinct and respond immediately, or you can take a beat and think about your answer. I felt most connected to my dad when?
When he got sick, he was diagnosed with cancer a few years ago, and he's fine now, thankfully. But we stayed with him in the hospital for those 10 days when he had to do this like big surgery. And I feel like I felt very connected to him in those days because it's different when you care for someone. Something shifts, I would say, in the relationship, especially with a dad who is the giver extraordinaire. And it was our turn, and he struggled to receive. And I think we were both very uncomfortable, but then it just strengthened our connection, I would say.
That's really nice. I like that. I was most proud of my dad when?
I was most proud of my dad when there's so many moments, but it's really hard. I guess I was most proud of him when we once had a conversation where he openly reflected on doing things, like needing to do things for himself, and he admitted all the mistakes he had kind of made by devoting so much of his life to everything and anyone but himself, and that he needed to actually change that. So I was really proud of him, yeah, in that moment.
That kind of self-reflection, in my experience, does tend to happen amongst Arab men once they do get to a certain age, and it usually starts at around mid-50s.
Yeah.
It is my hope that men of my generation, because I'm not really seeing it in Gen Xers, although, actually, no, I'm going to take that back. I actually think Gen Xers have done a pretty good job at starting that self-reflection from quite early on. I hope with my generation, I hope that, we should really start even as early as 25. I think an older Arab man, especially a boomer, doing self-reflection, it's something that I'm always very, very happy to see, because they are not trained to do it. It's easier for millennials to do self-reflection because we talk about mental health. Our parents' generation simply did not. So when they do it of their own accord, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
this is a really big, like, eureka moment.
100%.
That's
I
really
was like
nice.
floored. I was like, oh, this is happening. Yeah. Yeah.
I was most disappointed by my dad when?
I guess once him and my sister got into a bad fight, and I was really upset at him because you don't mess with my sister, even if she's your daughter.
Did you go and talk to him about it? Did you go tell him like that was not cool?
I wasn't there, so she just told me about it. And yeah, and then they ended up resolving it, and he's actually never brought it up to me. So um,
Interesting.
yeah, but yeah, it just made me kind of angry. Yeah.
Is he good at conflict resolution?
No, no.
Mm,
He is, I always have to, and this is the thing, and I think, like you mentioned, it's less common in Gen X, less common with millennials, but boomers are very bad at admitting when they've done something wrong or apologizing. I think, especially Arab parents, like Arab boomers, like my dad, never. I have to apologize, even if he's done something wrong. So yeah, I think he's not the best. No.
I knew my dad loved me when?
2 years ago, it was my birthday. I was in Dubai. I was really upset. I was just having a bad time, and I was stressed. Work sucked. Everything sucked. And so he calls me on my birthday, and we're just talking. He's like, "You don't sound okay." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not feeling so well, whatever." And then I open up to him about it, whatever. The next day, my aunt happened to be in town, and she told me, "I want to have coffee with you. Let's have coffee. It's your birthday." It was my birthday that day. We go to this coffee shop. We're having coffee. And then I'm like, "Oh, I need to go." And then she's like, "No, no, just stay 2 more minutes." And then my dad just walks up. He lives in Jeddah. He came and
Wow.
he surprised me. So he really
Wow.
cares. And then I just started crying just because at that point, we hadn't been very close for a while, not because of anything, just out of pure distance and not seeing each other so frequently. And I wasn't really telling him much about what was going on in my life. And then
Yeah.
after one conversation, that's all he needed for him to come. And I was like, okay, I feel very loved and supported. Yeah.
I felt like I truly understood my dad when?
I think I felt like I truly understood him when I had a conversation with him about my career, and he has never been happy with his career. He just did it for us. He always said he always said that he didn't love what he did, but he did it because he had a family to support and he had to, he had to do the thing. So he's very pushy and adamant about us doing what we love. No matter
Mm,
what we've like how much we failed or like what we've done, he just keeps he has this insane conviction in the idea that you have to do what you love. So I feel
mm,
like I never understood it because I was like, just lead by example.
mhm,
But
mhm,
I think recently with visa stuff in Dubai and being really stressed and thinking like I just want to take a job anywhere. I was like, oh my God, like I can't imagine going through all this and having a wife and having children and having family back home that you have to support. And I just really like appreciated and I felt sad, but I really understood why he did all of that. And it was really a selfless decision. It was for us and for the family. But yeah, I felt like I really understood him recently.
Finally, for the last segment, and I would say one of the most important ones, and kind of the whole reason, part of the whole reason why I'm doing this podcast. What advice would you give to any Arab dads out there today?
I think every Arab dad, obviously there's so much, but I think it's always lead by example. It sounds very cringy, it sounds very annoying and cliche, but I really think that the most important way we learn as kids from our parents is just by watching and observing. Like if you wouldn't want your kid to lose their cool or act irrationally, don't try as hard as you can. And also, I think it's really important to acknowledge when you've made mistakes and work really hard to rectify them. So I guess it's just like lead by example with doing self work, and then I think it's really important because I think with Arab dads, at least with my dad, and no, he would tell me something and maybe not do it. Yeah, I don't know. It just felt like I wished that it became then harder for me to trust his judgment on things or trust what he was saying.
Practice what you preach.
Practice what you preach is a way better way to put it. Yes.
My dad was exactly the same. You know, my dad used to be like, "Ruh ilab kura, ruh go swim, go play football." It's like, okay, I see what you do, and all you do is just sit and watch TV and overeat. So it's very hard, you know. And then my dad would be like, "Ana مش عايزك تطلع زيي. I don't want you to be overweight like me." It's like, okay, well, you're not like, you know. And this was when I was pretty young, when I was 10. So he was probably maybe in his like early to mid 40s by then. And I want to be like, dude, you're only like, I don't know, like 45. Like, go on a treadmill, you know, like don't sit here and tell me what to do and then you don't do it yourself. Yeah, lead by example and practice what you preach. Not cringy at all, because
Yeah.
I do think that Arab dads, they're not Arab dads of the boomer generation
Yeah.
are not good at doing that.
Yeah.
I think Gen X, to be honest, I think Gen X got off to a pretty good start
Yeah.
because Gen X were way healthier and they go diving and swimming and cycling and they do all that kind of stuff. And then I think it is getting progressively better.
Yeah. I think it's exactly what you said where when your dad said ما بدي إياك تطلع زيي, my dad said that to me all the time. And
Yeah.
it kind of relates to the last thing you were telling me, which is when he told me, follow your dreams because I don't want you to end up like me in a job you hate for 35 years. But it's hard for you to take those risks if you don't have a role model. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's impossible. Of course you can, but it's just harder. And I think people who have parents who did that find it way easier to continuously change. Yeah.
I thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Well, thank
I've
you.
really, really, really enjoyed having you on. Really, really, really appreciate you coming on here. Really appreciate you sharing your story. You're sharing your dad's story. I would love to meet this man. Please. I would absolutely love to meet this man. So anytime I find myself in Jeddah, Ayah.
No, for sure.
By the way, even if you're not there, even if you're in Dubai, Ayah, كلمي أبوكي. Uncle, أنا جاي لك, huh? Like, yo, uncle, like, I'm on my way, coming to Jeddah. Like, let's go grab some mensef, please. Please show me how to eat mensef.
Akid. And you guys can recreate that photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Done. Perfect plan. But no, seriously, thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. This was amazing. You made it so easy, honestly, for me. And all the questions were so thoughtful. It was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll be right back.
Hey everyone. Big thanks to my guest Ayah, who offered a meaningful window into the Palestinian experience while talking about her dad. What I find fascinating about him is how, even as a progressive father in many ways, he still leans on some classic Arab parenting tropes. Do it because them's the rules, or do it because I said so. But what's important to keep in mind is the motivation behind those commands. Ayah's dad wants her to be a part of her community, because being a part of his community helped him rebuild a sense of home after the one he lost. And when it really matters, he shows up. He's present, dependable. He's there for the people he loves. That, to me, is one Arab trope worth holding on to. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please hit the follow or subscribe button, and please follow me on my other socials. Links in the episode description. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. My Arab Dad is a complete content production. It's produced, hosted, and edited by Ibrahim Kamel. Intro and outro music by Karim Zamfali. Artwork by Enas Rahman.